And a very good morning to you from the White Hart in Lewes. It is bloody cold out there. So wrap up. I think that we're not going to hit much more than 4 today, and starting at -5. Where are we at the moment? -2, although it is partly sunny. Oh my goodness me! What a thing! What a thing! What are we up to today? Well, we'll have a look at the newspaper headlines at the moment. They're much of a muchness, and that is that we've got rotten coppers, a lot of them. And I'm not a bit surprised, because the way that our leaders have supervised and cut corners and rationalised means that it is not only the NHS that comes in for a hell of a battering, and our Parliament that comes in for a hell of a battering, but most of our institutions are now completely out of control and in the hands of the bad guys. They really are, and it's not at all good. Not at all good. But we'll take a look at those headlines in a minute. But first of all, who is Mirador? You may well ask the question. We are small. We come out of Lewes in East Sussex. We describe ourselves as the biggest little television in the world, but also that although we're local, we are not parochial. So you never quite know what you're going to get. And particularly since this is the home of a great revolutionary, Tom Paine, the White Hart Hotel, where he developed his Rights of Man series before going off and starting the American War of Independence. So who are we? Well, let's take a look. There we go, rabbiting on again, and nobody can tell what I'm saying. A lot of people prefer it that way, they tell me. But later on this morning, we have got a professor who is in charge of. Hang on a minute. I want to make sure that I get it absolutely right. Is Professor Anil Seth, who is a professor of neuroscience, and since neurological disorders are very much order of the day, he'll have a lot to say. And I'm hoping that we are going to have a young man from the Rights of Man, which we use as the Works Canteen. It's a pub just across the road. Very good food, very good service, very nice people there. And he promised that he would pop in at 9:30, and I hope that he's remembered. And we will look forward to seeing him and having a chat, because we have offered. Talk about high streets. I have no sympathy whatsoever with the traders on Lewes High Street. We've offered through the Chamber of Commerce, or whatever they call themselves, and we've offered directly to some people, look, just pop in. We are live, and we are totally disorderly. Pop in to the White Hart, and you can have 10, 15 minutes to tell us who you are and what you can do. What take-up have we had? 1. That's all. So I have no sympathy whatsoever. If you're not prepared to get your finger out of your own backside, I can't help. And nor am I prepared to. You've got to make some effort as well. So if you moan and groan about how the high street is disappearing, it's your own bloody fault. You know, you've got to do something about it yourself. Nappies went out. We don't put nappies on people anymore, and yet you seem to expect that. Oh, well, there we go. That's a good start to the day, isn't it? All right, let's have a look at the newspaper headlines, because they're all the same, more or less. a Met officer admits to brutal campaign of rape and terror. And he got away with it for almost 18 years. And the usual things is, there were opportunities to catch him and we didn't take them. Why? Because our leaders are scared silly of their own shadow. That's why. And that starts with Sunak. The things he was going to do when he was trying to become prime minister, and now he's prime minister, prevaricates over a whole lot of them. The only thing that has caused an uproar is his suggestion to curb the power of the press, to curb information, to bang down on protesters to the point where freedom of speech is a threat. Now, don't misunderstand me. I am not in favor necessarily of all protesters. Some of them are absolutely idiotic, and some of them do silly things, and some of them have bloody silly causes. But nonetheless, it is a right of the citizen to protest. And what is this government trying to do is to cut down on that. No, sir. No, sir. Let's start from ground zero. Let us make sensible precautions against the excesses that some of these protesters show. But a blanket, stop them. Police right to stop protests? No, sir. And this morning, the good reason why. Why not? Because there are lots of rotten apples in the barrel. Daily Telegraph, we have failed. He should not have been an officer. Too damn true he shouldn't. Then why was he? It's all very well to say, look back afterwards and say, he shouldn't have done that. Too late. Is the Metro, a Met cop admits he's a serial rapist, right? Excuse me, sir, can you tell me where the local loo is? Get up against that wall. Yes. And I'm sorry. Yes, I am old-fashioned. Very old-fashioned. I believe in duty, a sense of duty to the state, to your country, to your fellow man. Not many do anymore, and certainly not by the look of things. The police who are there, sent there to guard us and have no sense of duty whatsoever. And that comes from the top. Ever since we had the people in the Met who patently could not stem the rise in crime in London, and that spread throughout the country. Stupid things coming from chief constables. Every policeman should have a degree. For God's sake. You get somebody down a back alley and you give them a flick around the ear. That's the way it used to work, and it worked extremely well. Extremely well. And people who say, well, you know what we've got to do is to be nice, and we've got to dance and do the karaoke with these people are absolutely stark, staring mad as well. And people point to statistics. Well, there is one statistic that in Northern Ireland, prior to the Troubles, from 1950 onwards, while they were still hanging in place there, they had one murder. One. Now, you can't count them on the fingers of one hand. Now, just in Brighton and Hove and the area along the coast to Hastings, you can get a few killings a week. Oh, so we're all mad, are we? People of my age. People who believe in duty. People who believe in a sense of looking after your society. Well, the rest of you who have managed to get it into such a mess, boo on you. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm an old fart. But isn't it about time that you started to listen to some old farts, because we've lived through it, been there, done that. Oh, experience? Certainly not. We've got all these brand new ideas, which we're going to try out. Yeah. A few hundred coppers in the Met. A few hundred coppers around the country, all of whom have used the uniform to make sure that they can have their way with women when they didn't want them, to break the law in many, many ways. Yes, thank you. The Mirror. 9 chances to stop a rapist cop. Depraved Met officer carried out 80 sex attacks in an 18-year of terror. 80. And they say there were 9 chances to stop him. Why weren't they taken? Because they're afraid of their own shadow. We haven't got leadership anymore, not at any level. And it's time that we started to look for real leaders. My colleague, Stuart Dolby, says the big problem is that our leaders have become stars. Hollywood-type stars, and that's who we're governed by. Not people of integrity, not people who understand what the hell's going on in the world. No, people who preen and prance. and take part in television shows. That's who's leading us, and it's got to stop. It's got to change. The Daily Mail asks, just how many more monsters in uniform? Well, if we've scraped the barrel and we've got hundreds already, how many more are managing to get away with it? How many more are avoiding being uncovered? The Eye, a police crisis. 800 officers face an inquiry after the failure to stop a rapist. 800 involved. Goodness gracious me. Goodness gracious me. The Sun, monster of the Met. 9 missed charges to stop sadist cop. They're all the same, the headlines this morning, and it's all very well having these headlines. Is yes, the answer, the question is why? And it is the top leadership should come under question. At one time, if something went wrong with some government agency, the man at the top always faced the question. Not anymore. They duck and they dive and they dodge. The head of the Met, was sidetracked, but she presided over several years of complete and utter incompetence, and what's happened is she's still got a job. We've still got a job. I have no confidence left in what is the establishment, and at one time I had every confidence because they had a sense of duty. You may not have liked the elitism. You may not have liked the fact that some people were very wealthy and others were poor. Some people had big houses and others had none. Yes, all those iniquities needed looking at, but not at the cost of losing a sense of duty, losing a sense of what is right for the country. My goodness me. We're almost at a stage where people are ashamed to say that they're English. It comes under examination if you say that. Well, I'm English. I love this country. I am willing to embrace the United Kingdom, and I've lived in Northern Ireland, part of the United Kingdom. I've had quite a bit to do with Wales and a little bit to do with Scotland. So I'm inclusive, if that's the word you want to use. But I'm basically English. I'm proud to be English. And I believe that England should set the standards. It's the largest of the 4 unions, 4 countries in the union. And there is no sense in being ashamed of it. The Daily Express, just how did police miss serial rapists in its ranks? Well, that's a good question. Are we going to get an answer? What do you want to bet? What do you want to bet? Already the excuses are starting. The Times, mass walkout by teachers with millions of pupils. The Times is to ignore the wretched situation in the Metropolitan Police and talk about the teachers' walkout. Yes, everybody is after it for themselves. I understand the need for trades unions. I understand the need for balance. We cannot allow owners and bosses to just walk merrily through life, picking on the rest of us, which many of them do. I know that there's several companies that I would like to see the back of. One is American Express. The sooner it becomes American again and leaves us alone, the better. Badly managed. Why is it badly managed? Because it's managed from Chicago or Boston or somewhere, because the boss believes in globalization. What happens to a cardholder in Lewis is determined in the midst of the United States. That has got to stop. That's got to go. But the trades unions now are getting silly. They're getting so left-wing is that they'll strike at the drop of a hat. That is not duty. That is not considering what's good for the country. And that's got to stop as well. We've got to get a balance back. We've got to stop having superstars as prime ministers and cabinet ministers and leaders of councils strutting their stuff, shouting the odds about what they've done and what they haven't done. Well, what they haven't done far outweighs what they have done. And it's time for reform right the way through the system. Now, I'm not talking about removing a constitutional monarchy. I am all for a constitutional monarchy. I think it's the most settled form of government you can get. And there are 9 constitutional monarchies in our backyard already. The Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, all constitutional monarchies, all very settled political systems. But the rest of it needs a thorough going over. A thorough going over. It is not fit for purpose. Financial Times. US Pharma Group pulls out of NHS deal in warning shot over drug pricing. Well, I don't quite know what that's about, to be quite honest with you, but let's see whether we can see it's an astonishing image. Shows a crane lifting. Strange enough, the assessment of what's on it does not match the headline, and so there's obviously trouble at the wet mill over drugs and drug pricing, and whether in fact that the makeup of those people who provide us with a lot of our pills is going to affect the pricing, and will that affect how the NHS will pay for some of these drugs? Because without them, we're in trouble. Oh, dearie, dearie, dearie me. I am having a go this morning, aren't I? How about the Daily Star? The world's most feared mafia boss is caught after 30 years on the run. Bada bing, it says. And at least somebody has been affected somewhere. 30 years, a mafia boss has been able to escape the law. Well, he's had it now, but by golly, that was a wait, wasn't it? That was a wait indeed. Now, let's have a look at what's going on locally, because we do need to know some of the worst things that are going on. And here we go with some local stuff. Armed police in a town after a woman is seen with a blade. Which town is that? Let us take a look. Eastbourne, armed police recap after a woman seen with a bladed article. Bladed article. My God, how we twist and turn our language. Such a beautiful language, and they can't even leave that alone. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. So what else have we got? Who knows? Is trying to get back on track with this is impossible. Oh, I give up on these things sometimes. The trouble with these local things is that they are so busy getting the ads there that you can't actually get to the pages that you want, and it's let's here we go. A man is seriously injured after the car overturned in the A27 crash, which closed the road. Parts of Sussex still underwater after the torrential rain causes floods near homes. That's particularly in the central part of Sussex and to the east and to the west. Lewes, being an old Saxon word for a hill, sits on a hill, and generally speaking, parts of it are quite immune from flooding, but a lot of other parts are already flooded, and we can expect more rain to come. Multiple now flood warnings in Sussex after heavy rain drenches the county. Viral drink Prime is being stocked in some branches of Spa. Heavens only knows what that's all about. A reluctant Brighton star and Trent Alexander-Arnold detour among moments in this Liverpool win. Oh, that's the football, and the Seagulls beat Liverpool 2-0. So that's the bits and the pieces that we are getting locally. Now, there is a weather warning in operation from the weather office. First of all, roads early in the morning are going to be icy, and they were this morning. Watch out for your driving, which is going to remain very cold. And if we are going to get the full blast, it's going to come tomorrow. It's going to come on Wednesday. And we can expect a blast from either the Arctic or the Antarctic, whichever it is that affects us. I can never make out which one it is, but it's bloody cold anyway. And it could be that we get some snow tomorrow, and that warning is in place. So be careful. Be careful, and don't get caught out. Let's see if we can take a look. And no, we don't want that. All right, yes, we seem to be having a fair old picture. It's not bad. So we'll turn the sound down so it doesn't interfere with us. There we go. We got rid of the echo coming through, because the picture you get is slightly delayed from the picture that we sent out. So that's more or less where we stand. Who are we? Well, oh my goodness me, that's who we are. It's Mirador Television, coming out of the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, and we got all sorts of bits and pieces for you this morning. But basically, tune in at about 10 o'clock. Because we have a doctor or Professor Anil Seth, who's a professor of neuroscience, and that's on everybody's lips. I have got a neurological problem because I've got Parkinson's. But we had Doddy Weir, who had neuro problems just recently in the headlines. And we have footballers who are suffering neuros problems from heading the football. So it's very much a serious topic, and this man is an expert. He is appearing on the weekend. I can see which day. I'll probably be able to tell you is Sunday at 9:50. Oh, he's an early bird at the All Saints Centre to discuss his book. And those of you who are interested, get up early on Sunday morning, miss church, and go along and listen to Dr. or Professor Seth and his book on neurosurgery and neuroscience. It is going to be very worthwhile. There are lots of other interesting people at this thing. Vince Cable is on Friday, and he is coming along to Mirador to be interviewed. He's on at 7 o'clock. And on Saturday, Angela Gallup, the next national expert on forensic science, and she talks about crimes that are solved by explaining her best stories from the cutting edge of forensic science. Let's see, also on Saturday, former leader of the House of Commons and Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, explains the highs and lows of working in politics, and that is Andrea Leadsom. Yes, a name that was conjured with just a few weeks ago. Professor Kerry Brown, the Professor of Chinese Studies at King's College London, and Robert Hardman will be a very interesting one on Saturday at 5:20. And of course, he's one of Britain's leading authorities on the royal family. So a few secrets likely to come popping out there. Right, what are we going to do now? We will know. Oh, listen, this is what you got to watch out for. Well done, the energy companies. They're full of bright ideas to help their customers. Now they've made power so expensive that for an average house such as this, you can't afford to heat it. So you don't need appliances such as this. But that means you also don't need a fridge, because you can keep your groceries cool and fresh without it. The house is cold enough. Well done, chaps. Well, there we are. That's who we are, Mirador Television. Watch out for the white stuff. It is promised for much of the county, and we got caught last time. Let's not get caught this time, because if we anticipated and it doesn't come, so much for the better. And if we anticipate and it does come, we're prepared. Right ho. Now, is to take us up to 9:30 when we're expecting our first guest. Let us take a look at a couple of things that we've got going. First of all, is our art show with Sarah Fitch Hayes, and she and I have a nice little chat about things. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, or 2 minutes past 9, it's a good time to put your feet up, have a cup of tea, and just watch Sarah and what she has to say. An artist of some considerable renown, and jolly good fun. Because I may be asked to play Father Christmas. Nobody's asked me yet. I'm very disappointed.
Oh, you're lying. Your name's on the list, I'm sure.
I'm glad that you can give me that sort of assurance. It makes me feel much happier. Sarah Fitch Hayes and myself, talking art as usual. She knows all about it. I know absolutely nothing, which is a good way to be.
Mm-hmm.
What have you been doing this last week with the oils?
Oh, I've been very, very busy. Very busy.
Right. Okay. Tell all then.
Way.
Tell all.
My voice is gone, so I've got a bit of a cold. So I have to pick up my huskiness. Do I sound sexy?
Well, I bet your husband's pleased about
that. But yeah, no, I'm working on I'll tell you what I'm doing at the moment. I've done the Harvey's bottle. That's hanging up in the actual back of the brewery at the moment because they're deciding what to do with it.
Which brewery?
You know, Mr. Miles Jenner.
Oh, you got hold of Miles, did you?
Yeah, I did. I finally walked in and I managed to get hold of him.
Oh, right. Yeah, good. Was he pleased?
He loved it, and he said, "Look, I think it's a bit too photographic for postcards and things." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. You know, what do you think? How would you like to use it?" And he goes, "Oh, well, maybe I could have it hanging. It could go in one of our Harvey's estates or pubs or whatever." And I said, "Well, why not?" So he's hanging it on the wall, and he's deciding what to do with it. So,
oh, excellent, yes, excellent. Yeah. Oh, yeah, well, yes. Well, tell us, what did you think of Miles?
He seems like a nice guy.
He's a nice man, isn't he? Yeah.
Nice,
and he's very good at what he does. Okay. I mean, he's basically the chief brewer as well as the chief executive.
He brews the beer himself.
Oh, indeed. He's in charge of it, yeah. In fact, I think, if my memory serves me correct, is when you go into his office, it actually says chief brewer. It doesn't sort of say boss man. Oh, well, that's splendid. We've got to get some pictures of that hanging on the wall in the brewery. Yeah.
It's actually in this shop, you know, the brewery shop, where he's got a little office in the back of it. That's where it's hanging. And then one of the kind gentlemen to put it on the wall because they didn't want it damaged, which I thought was really lovely. So nicely
absolutely. That's terrific. Oh, I'm very pleased that you got hold of him, and very enterprising that you went in and sort of stamped your little foot and said, "Hey, I got a bottle here, he can see."
I got a little bottle.
Oh, that's terrific. And I'm sure that Max will insert a picture of what we're talking about because he's got one in last week's programme. So that bottle is doing very nicely for us.
It's hanging well.
It is.
It's hanging around.
Now,
and doing
in
its
that
thing.
brewery, did you get any ideas for more?
Oh, I have, yes. I've
Yeah,
got
right.
about
Okay.
6
Tell us
bottles.
what you would choose from the brewery.
Well, I've got 4 or 5 other bottles. I'm going to choose 4 or 3 out of them, and I'm going to do a
Right.
series of postcards. I'm still going to roll with that because I think once I get the colours behind it, the pop arty pastel colours behind each painting, I
Right.
think he'll roll with that for next year.
Oh,
For next
right.
Christmas.
Great.
I really do.
Yeah.
And do a calendar. He was saying the idea of calendars. I said, well, I could easily, design a calendar. That's,
Yeah,
do 12
yeah.
bottles for each month.
Oh, smashing. So more commissions might come from it.
Well, who knows? You've
Yeah,
got to be in it to win it,
that-
right?
that's
so
excellent.
that's what I'm doing.
That's
so
excellent. I
I'm
mean,
so thrilled.
yeah. Is popping the bottle in is.
I've also
Yeah.
got an update. I have
Yeah.
sold 4 paintings from the gallery.
All right. Now tell us all about that as well.
Well, we did a Black Friday at the end of November. We did a little
Mhm.
promotion, and I don't know if I said it at the last interview, but I sold 2 love hearts. I sold some prints
What?
and some prints, and I did a
Oh,
rock,
right,
Brighton
okay.
rock
Yeah.
painting, and I sold a little miniature fab lolly painting.
Oh,
Not
terrific.
fab, knobbly bobbly. That was it.
Right, and this
So
is all
four
out of the
paintings and a
gallery.
print, Yeah.
Yeah. Now I asked you last
Fantastic.
time if you track where they go. Do you know where these went?
I knew 2 of them went. I think I have spoken about this actually now. 2 of them went to one of my regular customers, which is fantastic, and I thank her forevermore. So
So the Americans love your stuff, don't they?
the Americans.
Yeah. Didn't you say it went to America?
I went to America, but that you were talking about years ago. I went
Oh,
13,
sorry,
14 years
yeah.
ago. So since I've had this style, I haven't been to the States.
Right. Okay.
But we're going to go there next year, aren't we, Keith? I think.
Well, you're coming. It looks as if we got our thing on in March.
Oh right, so
Yeah,
it's still going
yeah.
ahead, is it?
Well, it's we haven't had the full okay yet, but
Oh, okay.
when you don't hear a no, you can be fairly
Sure, okay.
fairly sure it's been
Because I
considered.
need notice to grab some time off work actually, and,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
see this young little chap
if
of
the
mine,
if the airline isn't interested, and I mean that will be good material for you, I would have
Oh,
thought.
fantastic.
Have you ever painted planes?
I haven't actually, no.
Well,
Probably in the
how
sky in
does
the
it appeal?
distance or something. What's a painted plane?
Yeah.
That'd be unusual. Be a new start. Be a new
Yeah.
chapter. In my
Well, I
life,
must say
guess.
you're always very daring.
Oh, I don't have any as such, but I try and grow a pair and get on there and do it. That's what you have to. Victor.
Yes. That's great. I mean, just to remind people, Sarah likes a lot of the iconic stuff from the United States, and paints some of the stuff, including bubble gum.
Well, the next is the Bazooka Joe. That's the one I'm looking at. But at the moment, I'm doing something a bit unusual. I'm doing like 3 lollipops. Like
Right.
those old-fashioned swirly
Yes,
ones,
yes.
and they twist around. And they've got all different colours. And in the background, I'm doing comic strips behind them.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
Which comic strips?
Just a random comic I bought in Brighton. Just a black and white. Because I don't want it too colourful because it's too distracted from the lollipops. So I decided just to have it nice and simple, black and white.
Mm.
So that's on the finishing stage. So next time, I'm sure in the new year at some point,
We'll have something to look at. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh,
yes.
that's great. Now, when you said background comics, I always think of Dick Tracy as an
right.
American comic thing because Dick Tracy goes back to I think the 40s or the 50s, but in those days he had a wristwatch that you could speak. He could speak to headquarters and so on.
Bit James
Yeah,
Bond.
and that was in the 50s, right?
Oh wow.
Now what's happened in the 2020s is now you can get this watch, can't you, from
Oh, right.
Google or whatever, and
It's like Hey
definitely
Google,
marvellous
but a watch.
things. Yes,
We've got one of those
yes,
on the Hey
yes.
Google.
Come in, Dick Tracy. Yeah. And I used to love the thing that when he hit somebody, they would do a little cloud, and it would say "wow"
Oh, like
or
Batman.
"sock" or
Pound,
yes,
yeah,
that's right.
pound,
Yeah.
excellent.
Well,
I love it, yeah.
I would guess Dick Tracy probably came out of the same stable as Batman, so yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like they're doing the same. Yeah,
But
definitely enjoy one.
so are these old comics or new comics or?
I think not that old.
Morning,
Not
Kevin.
Really, but I probably would have preferred an old vintage comic.
Yeah.
But it kind of looks it looks good.
There was a lovely old bookshop in the lanes for many years, and they had lots of comics. It's gone now, unfortunately, like a lot of these things. But anyway, so you're going to do a background of comics with the 3 lollipops.
Exactly that.
Hey, that's very creative. That's very good.
Nearly off the
Okay.
press. Nearly
Yeah.
there.
Now, what else have you been onto this week?
Well, I think I've been looking after this little rescue dog we've had for the last 6 weeks. She was very unsettled.
Oh,
when
this
she
is
first came.
Minnie.
This is Minnie. This is
Minnie,
our
Minnie,
yes.
that's a Minnie Mouse.
She was
Yes,
very
yes, yes.
unsettled, and now we're just, we're
How's
nurturing
Minnie doing?
her, and she's doing a lot better than she did. She's not yapping at the other dogs and wailing and screaming as much. She's really, really unsettled, totally, and toilets around the house. But now it's like very occasional.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Is she affectionate to you?
Oh, she is, yeah. She's always cuddling up to us, and she's very playful. She loves playing tug of war. And she picks up her toy. If I say toy, she'll run and get. I taught her to get a toy, and she just goes and gets a toy and just starts playing.
That's great. Now, let's just because it is the end of the year and we're heading towards Christmas, but let's just recap some of the things that you have done this year while you've been with us.
Wow. Do you know what? My head's
Well,
so
not all of
foggy,
them, but some of them. There were 2 or 3 that you did in the old studio, for instance. What were those? Remind me what those were.
Oh, golly, I did a large fab, a large knobbly bobbly.
Right.
I've created some prints. Golly, I'm gonna have to remember now. I did a caramel one. The caramel. Do you remember seeing that one at all?
Right, I think I remember that.
Caramel Fantastic, it's called. It's a large caramel flavoured milkshake.
Right. Yes, that's right. Yes.
And I did the bubble gum.
Yes.
And I did the bottle of Harvey's.
Yes. And didn't you do a Coca-Cola or a bottle similar?
I think it was a print I got together. I think the Coca-Cola I hadn't actually quite finished. I've done the one that's gone to Panama.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Last year or the year before.
Yeah.
And my paintings take a while to do. So each time I do them,
Well, I'm sure they're not
it's
instant.
not like a quick fix. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, Sarah, can you do that
No
by
adding
next
water,
week?
no.
Yeah. But it's lovely because when Nita asked me to, do a whole show, I just couldn't get it all together that quickly. I'm honest with people now. I say, I'd love to do a show with you guys, whoever offers it. But I say you need to give me at least a year's notice, at least, because it takes like weeks and weeks, like 3 to 6 weeks, depending on how big the painting is.
Right.
So yeah, it does take time.
Well, we could do the steps. It occurs to me that one of the things that we might do, if your gallery were agreeable, is we should do a programme down in your gallery.
I could ask.
Well, will you ask? Because it would be nice to be surrounded by art and that atmosphere. As much as we love this hotel, it is a hotel, and the atmosphere that you work within would be very nice to reflect, I think.
It's give you an impression.
Secondly, it's where you sell a lot of your pictures from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to. I should ask the team.
And thirdly, it's in the lanes, isn't it?
It's just in the lanes, yeah, next
In
to the
the lanes,
mezzanis,
yeah, which are in themselves are sort of a bit artistic. Have you painted the lanes at all?
I haven't, but I actually have taken photographs ready to paint.
Ah, right.
But it's something I put on the back burner.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
something I
Yeah.
would-
Well,
I
I mean,
would
there's an
visit,
awful lot
yeah.
on the back burner, but the nice thing is that all these things on the back burner, you surprise us, and you come in and sit down and say, "Oh, by the way, I finished this one." We've forgotten that you took the photograph. Yeah. That stopped us in full flight. Have no idea why there was a pause there. It just simply stopped playing, and these things do happen, particularly as we're so small and we don't have an engineer to go scuttling into the background to say what on earth has happened. But a very interesting chat to Sarah Fitzhage, and we will try very hard to come back to it in a minute or two. I do not know why it has stopped, and I can't get it to work again. Never mind. We'll see what we can do. And see whether we can get that back. Even I was interested in it, and I have to put up with an awful lot of this stuff, which I'm seeing several times. But nonetheless, let's just see whether, in fact, we can get it going again. I may be. No, that's not, is it? It's a disaster. Yes, I'm very disappointed.
Oh, you're lying.
It's where you sell a lot of your pictures from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love to. I should ask the team.
And thirdly, it's in the lanes, isn't it?
It's just in the lanes, yeah, next
in
to
the
the
lanes, yeah, which are in the themselves are sort of a bit artistic. Have you painted the lanes at all?
I haven't, but I actually have taken photographs ready to paint.
Ah, right.
But it's something I put on the back burner.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's an awful lot on the back burner, but the nice thing is all these things on the back burner, you surprise us, and you come in and sit down and say, "Oh, by the way, I finished this one." You know, we've forgotten that you took the photograph. But yeah. No, it's not going to play ball with us this morning, so we'll have to get that tidied up. Okay, let's just remind ourselves of who we are, first of all, despite the fact we may be a little frustrating there with a hiatus in what's happening. So there we are. I'm back again. This morning's headlines, almost universally across the newspapers, are the fact that there are rotten cops, and that the one particularly has been with the force for over 15 years and committed 80 crimes, and that all sorts of opportunities to unmask him were ignored by the powers that be. This burning desire not to have scandal surrounding things in any given department lends to all sorts of bending over backwards to not point the finger. This has had dreadful consequences because there are dozens and dozens of women that have been raped or abused by this copper alone, let alone some of the others. How many others lurking? They don't know, but at long last, the alarm bells are ringing. And you watch all the chief constables rush for cover. Not our fault, Gov, and oh, well, we're going to get rid of all these people. Shouldn't have had them in the first place. They weren't doing their job. And I'm afraid that the idea of a chief constable who's got to have a PhD has got to be re-examined. We need somebody who encourages the coppers to take kids down a back alley and give them a clip around the ear. Oh, the Liberals say you can't do that. You can't do that. Well, I'd much rather have a slight abuse of being clipped around the ear than the sort of abuse that we're seeing now from your own present system. It's got to change. Our attitudes have got to change. We've got to start thinking about duty again. What is good for the country? What is good for our society? Not as is good for us. I'm not saying that we've got to ignore ourselves. Of course we haven't. We need self-confidence, and we need a personality, and we need to bring innovation, but not at the cost of ignoring everything to do with building a good, healthy society. That cannot go through the window. It cannot. And it's up to us as citizens to make sure it doesn't. So while we're pointing the finger, and of course the newspapers have this morning pointed the finger, we've got to say, how much have we contributed to this situation? And I would suggest rather a lot. Laissez-faire. Oh, well, no. I mean, I remember somebody that I had a lot of time and respect for in Northern Ireland. Her children went dancing on July the 12th around the bonfire, singing anti-Catholic songs. And when I remonstrated with her, she said, "Oh, yeah, well, it's just a bit of fun. Just a bit of fun." is stirring up trouble between Catholic and Protestant, just a bit of fun. And unfortunately, that's the attitude of a lot of people. It's just a bit of fun. It's not really something that should bother us. But it's the little things that add up to the big things, and we're seeing the big things now, and we're seeing them almost every week. It cannot go on. We have got to get back to a sense of duty, a sense of looking after our own communities. We don't get it from the leadership. I'm sick and tired of people saying, this is what the Lib Dems did, this is what the Greens did, this is what the Conservatives did. This is what the Communists did. What did they do individually to make our society better? And the answer is very little. Very little. They are too busy pouncing around telling us how great they are. Well, they're not. Personally, I could care less about the town council. There are one or two good souls on it, one or two very good souls on it, surrounded by a bunch of people who could care less except shouting the odds for their political party. Let's do away with political parties at that level and see how we make out. And then we can do away with it at the district level. And then we can do away with it at the county level. And then we can do away with it all together. Wouldn't that be a great day? Well, that won't happen. But we could start at the bottom. Let's start with the town council. Do you know the most effective mayor that we've had in a long time? Stephen Catlin, yes, let's name him. Most effective mayor. And who kept on saying, well, I don't know what I did. He showed true leadership. He was always there, and he still is. And what party does he represent? He's an independent. He doesn't represent any party. The most effective man that we've got. And in running for a next term, he's going to have to join a political party because it's become so expensive to actually go on the hustings to say, vote for me. What a dreadful situation we've got ourselves into when that can happen. Decent people can't actually run as independents because it's too expensive. Those are the things which need sorting out. And we've got less than a year to sort them, and nobody's even thought about it. They are all too busy pouncing about who they can get elected, who can be our next MP. I don't care who is our next MP, as long as they are fit for purpose. And frankly, we ain't got anybody at the moment fit for purpose. It's the political parties who have decided who we'll get. Let us have a chance to look at candidates. Look at candidates who have their own agenda, that tell us what they were going to do, even if they are fighting the political system. I would love a scrapper, and actually Lewis has always got a reputation for rebellion. Why? It's got this questionable, quirky television station, and not many people want it, care for it. They don't care. But we have got to have feet dug in on a sense of duty, and we keep on going. Well, let's have some politicians, some political people who are prepared to do that without getting involved in all this stupid party crap. I'll tell you, I sat next to a now leader of one of the political parties at district council before they were elected, and the condemnation of the cabinet system, which is iniquitous, was widespread. We cannot have this. We cannot have this. They got power. Oh, well, it's not such a bad system. Why? Because it supports their own political power. It's no better. The cabinet system is awful. Who brought it in? Tony Blair. You might be a Blairite and you might not, but that's one of the worst things that he did. So what you've got is a little power group who call the shots. And it is a little power group. It's just a few people. If you ever go to a council meeting, they all stand up and put their hand up on demand. Snap, snap, snap. Vote. You vote for. It's absolutely hilarious if it wasn't so serious. Yes, they do. It's almost, who for? Hands go up. Who against? Hands go up. And you can almost guarantee they're all tied together with a piece of string. Hands go up. They have no idea how farcical they look or appear. And then they go back and they tell us how marvelous they are. Well, you're not. You're just a bunch of dummies. There are lots of things in this life that I would not want to be. A planner is one. But a local politician, goodness gracious me, how farcical. I wouldn't want to admit to anybody that I was a local politician. It's so ridiculous and ludicrous the way you carry on. Oh, I love this stuff. I love where I can have a real go. I really do. Right, it's 9:26. I don't know whether our first guest is going to come, but let's hope he does, because he's a lovely chap who works at the Rights of Man, which is our works canteen across the way, and I'm very keen to see him if he does turn up. And he's a very articulate young man, and a very good at his job, and that's always very good. Who are we? Let's have another go at who we are. Mirador Television. And can I suggest to you, because of course we're on social media, you can find us at miradortelevision.com, on YouTube, on our own website, which is, that's what I just gave you, miradortelevision.com, on Mirador Television on YouTube, and on Facebook, and on LinkedIn, and on Twitter, and sometimes bits and pieces on Instagram. But this past 2 weeks, we've had some sterling people as interviewees who have given us a great insight into what's going on in our society. I would suggest that you backtrack and tap in to catch some of those interviews. Really worthwhile. That's our mentor says, I've got to keep telling you who and where we are. Well, that's who we are. Now, what else have we got for you? And now I've got something here called My Movie, and I have no idea what that's about. Shall we see? Well, that's who we are. Hang on a minute. I want to bring that up. We'll stop it before it gets cracking, hopefully. Many people find commuting by train tiresome. But one of the pleasures of taking a train to London is that it passes through some of the most beautiful countryside in the UK. None more so than the view of the countryside as the line approaches Clayton Tunnel, just north of Brighton. The tunnel is the longest on the line, at 1.25 miles, running under the South Downs. It's unusual because the entrance is not the usual railway brick. It is instead designed to look like the gateway to a castle. On top is a cottage built for the railway's lightkeeper in 1849. The tunnel itself was opened in 1841 and the cottage added later. Idyllic. But after 1861 it became a nightmare, or at least for those who believe in ghostly goings-on. In August of that year, a night train left Brighton, travelling north to London. Partway through the tunnel, it stopped at what it thought was a danger signal from the lightman. The engine driver was correct. The railway official had indeed given a danger signal, but the train had rushed past him before pulling up. Thinking the train had cleared the tunnel, the unfortunate lightman gave the all clear to a following train. And it slammed into the back of the first train in the dark, killing 23 and injuring 176 more. It was the worst ever accident on the line. And people walking on the downs over the underground passage have reported hearing the screams of the passengers as the trains pile into each other. The line is now also a direct line from Lewes. I've travelled through that tunnel 1,000 times. I've never heard a scream other than the screech of the wheels and brakes. But I've never walked over the downs at that point either. And I turned down an invitation to stay in the cottage overnight. In fact, I get tense each time I go into the tunnel, knowing what had happened more than 165 years ago. But my fellow passengers carry on reading their newspapers, obviously oblivious Well, we seem to have had a big interruption there. I'm sorry about that. We have gone to Plan B to the good old standby, which means that your picture won't be quite as good as it has been up until now. And I have no idea whatsoever why that happened, because all the signs are that it's perfectly okay. We will just try again, if we may, and see if uh, there we go. And I hope that on my monitor it looks as if the picture isn't too bad at all. So let's hope that we are back on track, and that for the remaining time that we've got this morning, because we've got a very good interviewee coming up. It is not as good, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's. Let's put on. Oh, well, let's go for my movie again. And oh, there we are. There we are. Hopefully, that will be the final interruption. One can never tell with this. We are the biggest little television in the world, and we do have some problems from time to time, unfortunately. And we are working very hard. We're always working. Day in, day out, and night in, night out. And at the moment, Kevin, our trusty man, with the sword and screwdriver, is working on getting us permanently into the internet, so that we don't have these interruptions. But there we are. We just have to put up with it at the moment, I'm afraid. Is we have in about 15 minutes Professor Anil Seth, who is the professor of neuroscience, and he has a best-selling book, is How Our Brains Create Our Everyday Conscious Experience Through Billions of Neurons. So an interesting topic, and he will be talking about that. And on let's see, when is he due up? on Sunday at 9:50 in the morning. That's this coming Sunday, the 22nd of January, at the Centre, All Saints Centre, and a very, very worthwhile session to attend. But you're going to get a little preview of that in a few minutes when we contact him and bring him onto our system. But we just while I do that, I need to sort of to try and gauge your attention just to make sure that you don't get bored. And I wasn't expecting this, so we're having to play around a little bit, and the plenty of things here, but they're all too long. There's one here that says the Brewers' Christmas. Let's just go back to Christmas for a moment and see what we have in the Brewers.
Waco is a joke. Well, it is a bit of a joke, because if anything can make us laugh, it's the antics of our politicians, and it doesn't matter at what level. It's quite incredible that we oh dear, the shenanigans that they get up to. It just there we go. Sorry about the slight hiding of the face. I'm not trying to conceal myself, but I just think that we have such a good time making us laugh, reading about what the politicians are getting up to. I mean, I couldn't make it up, and I've got a pretty fertile imagination. I don't think anybody will ever be able to write a serious novel about this period that we're going through. But the thing is that they all take themselves terribly seriously, whether they're talking to a chair or going into cabinet or getting all wound up about some ism or other and totally forgetting that there are people out there who expect them to do things for their money and also for the good of their community. It is very, very amusing. Every time that you read anything from Lewes District Council, East Sussex County Council, the governments in Westminster, and for that matter, the governments around the world at the moment, you can't help but laugh your head off at them. The only thing is that it's dreadfully serious because it affects us all. So do keep an eye on what's going on any media, social media that you want, for that matter, television, and if you're into reading, and fewer people are, but get a newspaper. Although the trouble with the newspaper is, of course, it's 24 hours after the fact. I mean, anyway, if you want to wake up with a laugh, wake up to either us or some other television operation, or the newspaper, or the radio, or whatever, because it'll give you a great chuckle. We're Mirador Television, miradortelevision.com, but you can also see us on Facebook. Oh, have a giggle. Oh, wake up to a politician. Oh, dear. Dearie me. Dearie me. I can't help it. Every time I hear the name Lewes District Council.
So there we go. That was wake up to a little bit of fun. I didn't even know we'd got that. Still, so there we go. We're on our standby system at the moment, but it's not too bad. Not as good as it has been all morning, but there we go. we have coming up, hopefully. We're just trying to make contact now, and I've got Professor Seth standing by in a minute or two, and he? I'm just checking a few things. I'm famous for making notes to myself and then not knowing what I did with them. So you just have to put up with that. We sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot. Oh dear. Is not terribly clever. But nonetheless, we will get hold of him one way or the other. And an interesting chap he will be. His book is a bestseller. And Speakers Festival in Lewis. And I'm sure that we'll enjoy everything that he has to say. And with any luck at all, he will pop up. But where are we now? Well, we are partway through. It is 9:50 in the morning of Tuesday, the 17th, and we can expect, I think, an interesting half hour. And why don't we? Well, we keep on. I'm told that we should be telling everybody who. So that's who we are. I'm having a good morning this morning. It's dreadfully cold outside. At the moment, it's still -1 degree. So do wrap up. That's how cold it is, and we can expect some more of this stuff throughout the week. Tomorrow apparently could be a whole raft of snow, and we may well. We may well have to decide not to come in. Woohoo! We normally we make our way in, but we do have we're on Plan B at the moment. We've got Plan C just in case we do get snowed in, so that we can keep talking to you, and hopefully you'll keep listening. We realize that the live version of this doesn't get to too many people, but throughout the day it gathers pace, and we have a large overseas following as well. We have all sorts of people around the world watching us, and we're rather pleased with that, because Lewis is in some ways the cornerstone of democracy as we know it today. Right, we had Tom Paine write The Rights of Man, but a good 3 or 4 centuries before, in 1264, there was the Battle of Lewes, which is considered by most historians to be the defining date when democracy first started. Not democracy as we know it, but nonetheless the first seeds, the first stirrings of democracy. Because from that battle, won by Simon de Montfort and the barons, dissident barons, over King Henry the Third, out of it came the first parliament. Yes, it was a parliament of barons. It wasn't a parliament of ordinary human beings, ordinary citizens, but nonetheless, up until then, it had been the divine right of kings. The king was there appointed by God, and he could do anything that he wanted to. And that came down to spending the taxes he was imposing upon the barons, until they said, enough is enough. We've parted ourselves out, and now he wants more money to party some more. And that's not on. And so they took him on at the Battle of Lewes. They won, and they formed the first parliament almost the very next day. It was a day in May, a special day in May, and the parliament was formed in Westminster, exactly where it is now, in the Palace of Westminster. Now, the two chambers, the House of Lords and the House of Commons, weren't built, and in fact, they were designed by a much later architect who designed a lot of the buildings in London, and indeed designed the part of the hospital in Brighton. And his name will come back to me in a minute. But nonetheless, it was the Palace of Westminster, which is the very ancient one, is still there, and where most of a lot of history, both death and destruction, as well as life and evolving, took place. So that's where we're at. Okay, 9:55. I hope that we'll get a guest pop up, but if not, we'll try again, and just to make sure that everything is working, we will send a second invitation, and so forgive me while I do this little bits and piece. We are quirky, and we have to do some of these things because a very big team of people, the way that they have at the BBC or even at ITV. Oh, hang on! It sounds to me as if a little there's a little plop there. And here we go. As in fact, we do have our guest. And good morning, Professor Seth.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Can you?
I can indeed. You're coming through loud and clear, and we've got a very good picture of you as well. It's very nice of you to join us.
You're very welcome.
Now,
great pleasure.
No, we're going to see you actually live at the All Saints Centre here. I think it's this coming weekend. And so we're letting people know that they can come and listen to your, what looks as, by the description, a fascinating talk. In some ways, the way that you was described to me was a professor of neurology, full stop. So perhaps you would like to tell people first what it is that you actually do.
With pleasure. Well, actually, one of the things that I am not is a professor of neurology. A neurologist is somebody with a proper medical background who might go in and you might consult if you have a brain injury or something like that. I'm a neuroscientist, so my interest has been for many years now, for 30 years or so, in understanding how the brain works. I mean, the brain is really one of the most complex objects we know about in the universe. It has 86 billion neurons and 1,000 times more connections. And wow, it's this incredible challenge to understand how this lump of electrical wetware that we each carry around inside our skulls accomplishes these everyday miracles. We open our eyes and we see a world. We experience a world. We wake up. How does this happen? These challenges have puzzled philosophers and scientists for thousands of years. And I'm joining the challenge of trying to understand how all this happens.
Now, your book has been a bestseller. Why have people been so fascinated in the brain? Is it the same reason for you, or is it the way that you write as a successful author? What do you attribute everybody wanting to read you?
Well, I mean, it's been a very great surprise, very gratifying actually, because writing a book is hard, and it took me several years. And by the time I was finishing, I kind of forgot about the possibility that people might actually read it. I just wanted to get it done. So it was wonderful that it has been so successful, and I hope it's well written. But fundamentally, I think it's a topic that everybody is interested in. I really mean everybody, because if you think back, I mean, when I was a kid, it's true, it's something that's animated me since I was very young. I think everybody, when they're young, has these questions about who am I? Why am I me and not somebody else? What happens when I die? Do I have free will? What's it all about? I mean, these are big existential questions that we often get educated out of asking in school and maybe in university too. But I kept sort of hanging on, and it turns out there's a tradition of trying to understand these big questions of consciousness. Why, how come at all that this brain, this biological system generates that experience? And then underneath that, the questions about self. Like, really, what does it mean to be me? Who am I? And I think this is a deep need we all have to come up with some answer for ourselves to these questions. I think that's why people have been interested in reading the book.
Yes, I mean, I must confess is that I stand in front of a mirror on frequent occasions and sort of say, what am I all about? And I then try to turn away because it seems like self-analysis, and I'm always punching the air and saying we've got to have a sense of duty and look for our society, and I feel guilty thinking about myself. But you, on the other hand, are turning that on the head and saying I should.
Well, I think a little bit of self-examination is always good for us, right? I mean, whether it's we go and see a therapist, whether we impose moral duties on ourselves, I think understanding ourselves helps us live a better life. And understanding ourselves can happen at many levels. It's not just the what I should do with my life and how I should spend my days, but much more basic levels about why do I experience this object as being my body and not some other object? What does an emotion mean? How much agency do I have over my actions and my thoughts? I think the more we understand ourselves, the more we can understand other people too. And this effort to understand consciousness and perception and self is one way of building new platforms for communication, for empathy, for understanding. Like, for instance, it seems to us that we all see the world as it really is. But one thing that research in my area, in my own research, is showing is that we all see the world differently. We all have different experiences, even of the same shared reality. And when we understand that, we can understand why people might hold differing beliefs, why they might find it very difficult to reach agreement on things. So there are many reasons why one might want to understand more about consciousness and the self.
Yeah. How do you bring this all together? In your research, how do you sort of say, I'm going to come to some sort of conclusion that I can write a book about?
I don't think there's a conclusion. This is kind of a midway point, if any, at best. But I do think there's a story here. One of the challenges and pleasures of writing a book is it does give you an opportunity to see how everything fits together, even if it's not the end of the story. And I've been working in this area. I mean, I first came to Sussex in the mid-90s as a master's student, and after I've been here ever since, besides a few years in the States as a postdoc. And studying consciousness brings together lots of different areas. It brings together neuroscience and psychology and computer science and philosophy and psychiatry and maths and physics. And at a certain point, I was really just trying to think to myself, how do all the various pieces fit together to make a whole? And I mean, it takes a book to explore that, but it does come together. And there are two main themes that I think are worth summarizing. One is the idea that the brain is a kind of prediction machine, that the brain evolved to regulate the body, and it does so by making predictions about the body and using those to control it. And it's that same principle that underlies how we experience anything, whether it's the body from within or the world outside. The brain is continually trying to predict what's going on out there or in here. And what we experience is not a readout of the world or of the body. It's the brain's best guess, the brain's predictions. We live in a kind of controlled hallucination. At least that's what I've come to think. And the other theme is that consciousness, the fact that we have experiences at all, for me, I think, is intimately related to our nature as living creatures. The brain isn't just a kind of meat-based computer that moves our body robot around from meeting to meeting. Our nature as conscious creatures depends entirely on the fact that the brain evolved to keep the body alive. We experience the world around us with, through, and because of our living bodies. And I think this way of understanding consciousness brings us much closer to much more part of nature than apart from nature. think that's very important.
How though do we control, if we can control at all, this sense? I mean, for instance, I'm always having a go at our politicians because I say they live in a bubble and they see things in a particular way. Now, are they controlling that, or is the brain telling them to behave that way, or just how does that fit in to the concept that you're propounding?
Well, I think you make a very good point there, that we all live in bubbles, and part of the problem is we don't necessarily realize that. I mean, sometimes we do, and I think politicians may be among those people who do realize that and exploit it. I mean, and then we from within our bubbles, we often seek out information that confirms the beliefs we already have, and this dynamic drives a lot of the polarization that we see. And I'm interested less in reinforcing this dynamic than challenging it and breaking through it. I think one way to do that is to realize that these bubbles, they don't just exist at the level of media and politics. They exist right down to the level of our experience of the world. I mean, there was a phenomenon a few years ago. Some of your viewers might remember. You might remember too, this photo of a dress that half the world saw as blue and black, and the other half the world saw as white and gold. And nobody could agree because it really seemed to them as though they were seeing the dress as it really was. And of course, what that revealed is what we experience, what we see, is not the world as it is, but the world as we are. And one of the studies we're doing at the moment, it's called the perception census, and it's a first attempt to really map out how we each experience the world in our own distinctive ways, how we each inhabit a unique inner universe. And by doing this, by shedding light on this hidden world of inner diversity, I think that provides one way to challenge this echo chamber dynamic that we see unfolding in our wider society. Because if we realize that the way we literally experience the world is distinctive to me, distinctive to you, could be different, that can cultivate a bit of humility about the way we see things. And this is me being a bit optimistic, but that humility about our perceptual experience could end up feeding through to a greater recognition and humility about what we believe and what we say and who we listen to.
Right. How do you go about this? I mean, you put your sandwiches in your briefcase and you go through the front door. Where do you go? What colleagues do you have? What's your environment when you're developing these thoughts?
So I'm very lucky to have loads of wonderful colleagues. I was just on a meeting with some of them just before talking to you. I mean, I work at Sussex campus, but over the last 10, 15 years there, I've been able to develop a group with many different kinds of colleagues, many different backgrounds. Consciousness research is intrinsically multidisciplinary. So yeah, I'll get to my office and I'll wander around and say hi to people. And we've got mathematicians there, physicists there, psychologists there, virtual reality engineers there, neuroscientists there. And they're all working on different things. But what I try to do is make sure that everybody talks to everybody else, so people are aware of what everyone else is doing. What happens after some time is that you get this crosstalk, you get these collaborative ideas that bubble up just through people being aware of the different projects that people are working on. And then, the way science works is typically we'll spend quite a lot of time thrashing out a project that we're interested in. It may come from a thought, it may have come from reading something, it may just have been there in the background for a long time. And then eventually we figure out how to do an experiment on it. The perception census has been quite a long project in its genesis, and it was part of a big art science project as well, which gave it some momentum. And for that, the collaborations are even wider. We've been working with graphic designers and marketing people to make it accessible. We've had 20,000 people already take part. And by the way, I should say, you can find this perception census on my homepage, anilseth.com, very, very easily. And take part too. It'd be great to get as many people as possible. But it's one of the joys of this research is that I feel like I'm always learning new things because I'm always talking to colleagues who know more about what they do than I do.
It seems to me that I worked for Reuters in the 1990s, so a great deal to do with business. And it was very fashionable amongst some of the major companies to hire people and just put them into a room and say, think. I mean, is that really something that you do? That you pull these people together and you sit down and you say, let's just think?
No, I mean, so if only it was that easy to get funding for a research group to say, yeah, we're just going to get people together and sit in a room and think. The truth is a big part of the job for any academic these days is to keep the research funding coming in, and so that we have money to pay people's salaries so that they're able to think. And that's increasingly challenging in these times where there's increasingly less priority on basic research. And I think, this is a shame. Every advance in society has ultimately depended on an advance in basic research to begin with, and then we get applications later. So a big part of what I have to do day to day also is figure out how we motivate, how we keep the research funded. Not so we just sit in an ivory tower and don't care about applications. Absolutely not. As we've been discussing, I think they're very important applications. But often we need to do the fundamental research first to understand the system first. And so, yes, typically people know roughly what they're doing because they've been funded to work on a particular thing.
Yeah. Without breaking any confidences, what sort of groups or industry or whatever do actually fund your research?
So it's varied. It really has varied. We've had philanthropic funding from charitable foundations. A lot of our funding comes from the government, UK government, but also the European Research Council, or rather it used to while we were still part of Europe. And it's one of the many tragedies of Brexit, at least according to me, that we've been cut off from our European research partners in this way. And other funding comes for a variety of sources. Strangely, I'm partly funded by the Canadian Institute for Advanced Research. They have a big international reach as well. Funding can come from all over the place. These questions are not specific to one country, one region, or one sort of interest group. So they really cross-cut a lot of different sectors. But it's always a challenge, because there are many good causes for research funding, and you have to always fight your corner very hard.
Right. Now, your book, once again, we return to the fact that it's a bestseller. Are you beginning to get this message out to more than sort of a few people that would say, oh, yes, neuroscience? Is the popularity amongst average people, or is there a specific group of people that read your material?
The book was really intended to reach an interested but non-specialist audience, in the tradition of popular science books in general. So I was then very inspired in my life by reading books by people like Richard Dawkins, who wrote The Selfish Gene, and books that go into some detail, that give you a new idea. They don't just sort of survey the field as it is from above, that try and give you a new idea, but try to do so in a way that will connect and be understandable by people who have no background in neuroscience or philosophy or anything. So it's designed to appeal to exactly that interested but non-expert reader, but also to my colleagues and peers as well. I want them to read it and learn something new. So it's a difficult trick to try to pull off. But in this case, I think it's worked. I think, obviously not everybody has read it, although maybe they will by some time. But it has reached beyond the audience of scientists. And the feedback that I've been getting has been very, very gratifying, that people do find it accessible. They do find it interesting. They do find it relevant and provocative. And most importantly, I think it changes the way people think about themselves and about the world in what seems to be a pretty universally positive way.
Now, in television, I'm used to being told I've got 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour or whatever, and I have to fit in as best I can what I'm talking about. You've got an hour on, I think is it Sunday that you're talking? You've got an hour in which to, what's going to be the focus of your talk?
Well, it's actually in conversation, and one of the lovely things about book festivals is that it's often, rather than me just standing up and giving a lecture, it's a conversation. In this case, with the former politician Norman Baker, And so it's really going to depend a lot on what he wants to talk about. But usually what happens in these cases is we'll take a tour through the main themes of the book about what consciousness is, how we measure it, what happens in sleep and anesthesia, how do we experience the world around us, and then how we experience the self. And we'll probably also touch on other themes like free will. Do we have it? Does it matter? And consciousness in other animals. What other animals have experiences? How do we know? And then maybe something that's very of current interest and something I've been thinking about for a long time now is artificial intelligence. What's happening in our societies with the rise of AI? And in particular, is there a scenario where artificial intelligence systems become not only intelligent, but also conscious?
Norman Baker is a good friend of mine. If he misbehaves, kick him under the desk.
I'm not sure I'll do that, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Now, it's interesting that you're going to do this in conversation and with somebody like Norman, who actually has always been a rebel. I mean, for instance, in his first year in Parliament, he asked more questions at PMQ than any other MP ever, and took everybody by surprise. So is it likely that this conversation is going to actually diverge from some of the things you would normally talk about?
Well, in a way, I hope so. I mean, that's also one of the pleasures of doing it, because
I'm not sure whether we've lost you.
Oh. Can you hear me now? Oh.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Anil, we are having a slight problem with the internet. Could you start that answer again?
Yes, if you can hear me now.
Yes.
Yeah, great. I'm sorry, I'm glad to be back. Yeah, well, I hope it does diverge a bit. That's one of the joys of the conversation, is that you never know quite where it's going to go. And one of the opportunities of this theme about consciousness is that there are many. It can be taken in interesting directions in so many different ways, whether it's to politics. I was recording a podcast the other day called Politics on the Couch with the Guardian columnist Raphael Baer, which was fascinating, because I'm obviously not a politician. I don't have an interest, but not a deep expertise. But exploring these connections about how different domains relate is something that I think is always worth doing, and I think it's fun and useful to do it in the setting of a festival like this as well, because if you just give the same talk over and over again, the risk is you end up boring yourself and therefore your audience. So I look forward to these events where you don't quite know what's going to happen. And of course, the other thing that happens is we always have time for hopefully a reasonably extensive Q&A with the audience. And that can go in all sorts of unpredictable directions, and that's almost always the most enjoyable part.
I don't wish to interrupt your train of thought, but Kevin, the man who looks after the bar here, he opens the barrel, and at 10 past 10, or 17 minutes past now, I'm asked to test to see whether the beer is okay for the rest of the day in the White Hart. So excuse me while I take a sip. Whether there's some motivation that my brain tells me that I'm enjoying that, only you would know.
Well, I mean, only you would know, actually, I think. So how was it? Did it pass the test?
It's passed the test. In fact, I will probably finish it before 11 o'clock. Now, I'm just a thick old journalist, and I ask questions. And I wonder if there are just two things that cross my mind. Way back in 1975, 76 or thereabouts, I was assigned to Northern Ireland, and I actually spent 15 years there during the Troubles. But Harland and Wolff, the shipbuilder, had stopped building ships, but it did keep a very good IT department. And the man there was a real go-getter. And he called a group of journalists together, and he said, you just walked past our computers. One computer filled the whole room. And he said, in 10 or 15 years' time, what you're going to do is to carry a mainframe computer around in your pocket, which, of course, now is our mobile phone. But one of the things he did say was that pilots would wear a skull cap. which would allow the brain to tell them that a plane was hurtling in the opposite direction at them much faster than the brain could happen. Now, I didn't totally understand that. Does that mean anything to you?
Yeah, I mean, so well, firstly, he was dead right about computers, of course. Yeah, I mean, it would probably have even greater power than an old mainframe in our smartphones these days. But there's also increasing interest in this other technology, which he was hinting at very perspicuously, which is called brain-machine interfaces. And this is the idea that you can bypass our sort of conscious perception and decision making and go straight from the brain to a machine. And one way of doing this is by putting, as you say, a kind of skull cap on. So this is a technology we use in my lab at Sussex. We have EEG, electroencephalography. You wear a sort of tightly fitting cap. It has a bunch of electrodes in. Works very well on people like me who have no hair to get in the way. And what it does is and what it does is it records the tiny variations in electrical field that are generated when brain cells fire. It's a very noisy measure. It's not that you pick out individual brain cells. It's a bit like dangling a microphone above a city and you try and listening in. I mean, you can't tell what people are saying, but you could tell if everyone's shouting at once, if a football match is going on or something like that. So that's what EEG gives you. But it nonetheless, it does record the signatures of brain activity, and we can now use those signatures to both understand what's going on in the brain, which is typically what we do, but you could also use them to drive other computers or machines. So in medicine, for instance, there's great interest in using this technology to help people who are paralyzed, because you can read directly from their brain what movement they are intending to make, and then use that to guide either an artificial arm or even their own arm by stimulating muscles. In the example of the pilot, I think it's a little out there. It's been in some science fiction films, I'm sure. The thing is, it's not that reliable, right? So you could use EEG to detect maybe that something is coming towards you, and that could be done very fast, and you could use that to do something. But with the current technology we have, it's not going to be totally reliable. And of course, when you're doing something like controlling a plane, you don't want to be right 56% of the time. You want to be right 100% of the
time. Yes, I mean, that's one thing that worries me is I'm a very comfortable flyer and always have been, but stepping onto a plane without a pilot and totally computer controlled worries me a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting things, isn't it? I mean, even if it might be demonstrably safer than having a human pilot, it's still psychologically quite difficult. And of course, the real challenges are when novel situations are encountered. I mean, we see this already with self-driving cars, that they're very, very good already when nothing unusual happens. The challenge for self-driving cars are when they come up against a situation that the programmers have not anticipated.
Do you have airlines or people like Boeing or whatever consult with you and say, what research is applicable to us and how to help us with pilots and so
on? Not really, not yet. I mean, to be honest, the interaction I have in the corporate world is usually with people at a more managerial leadership level who are trying to understand how people make decisions, how they see things, how a deeper understanding of perception can help organizations run more smoothly. I think there's a lot to be said there. There's a lot of utility in this kind of understanding for how organizations function, how interpersonal relations work. So yeah, Boeing has not yet knocked on the door.
I'll send them a telegram this evening. Now, another question is if we can just move to medicine very briefly. Yeah. I have Parkinson's, and obviously that's a so-called neurological. We don't call it a disease condition. Yeah. Do you actually, in your research, keep an eye on any developments in the medical world?
Absolutely. I think this is one of the main motivations for this area of work. I mean, in medicine, I think we've got a lot of we have an awful lot of challenges. We've seen over the last years how fragile our medical systems can be, but also how wonderful they can be when they're powered by scientific understanding of what's going on. We saw this with the development of the vaccine for COVID. Neurological conditions and psychiatric conditions are among the most perplexing for modern medicine because the brain is so complicated. Now, I'm often fond of a metaphor that in diseases of the body, medicine made a transition from medications that really just treat the symptoms, like you take a paracetamol to get your temperature down, to medications that get at the causes, like an antibiotic that might root out the cause of the infection. And that's the transition that medicine needs to make in the brain too. Currently, we have a lot of approaches that can deal with the symptoms. And I'm sure you have this in Parkinson's disease as well. There are medications that can alleviate many of the symptoms, but there's not really treatments that get at the causes for either neurological conditions or psychiatric conditions. In fact, Parkinson's disease is probably one of the conditions where medicine is closest to in understanding really the circuitry of what's going on and how it might be might be restored in some way. So I think this is hugely important from my perspective as somebody interested in consciousness. The work that I do is probably most relevant to the changes in people's experiences in neurological and psychiatric conditions. In Parkinson's disease, for instance, and maybe you can speak to this. There's many people focus on the challenges of movement. But there are also other challenges in thinking and in perceiving. Some people have hallucinations in Parkinson's disease. And so we're very interested in understanding how these arise and whether they can be treated in any way.
Now, forgive me if this sounds silly, but one of the treatments that I have for Parkinson's is I tell it to start off. And when I tell my consultant this is absolutely right, a positive attitude helps. Does a positive attitude help in these things, or is it just a dream?
No, I think it does, but I think there are limits, and I think often it's too easily said that positive thinking will cure you of anything, and of course that's not true. You can't think your way out of a physical cancer or something like that. But attitudes do make a difference, and this really connects back to where we started in this conversation, that the way we experience the world and the body is not just reading out what's there. It's the brain's interpretation of what's going on. The brain is trying to make sense of the world and the body. And the way it makes sense of especially signals from the body can change the body too. So there's a role for how our expectations can play into how we deal with the challenges that we face. But it's a fine balance. If we expect too much from positive thinking, then we're going to be disappointed and probably worse off than we were before. But maintaining some kind of positive attitude, interpreting your symptoms in constructive rather than destructive ways can often be quite helpful.
Well, I have to say to you that I noticed in reading about Parkinson's that there are two things that happened, and that is you had either an obsession with gambling or with sex. And I go into my consultant and say, Sandra, I have not been anywhere near a casino in months. And that starts off our positive thinking of the session. You're a delight to talk to because, thinking about these things is, I suppose I have to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. And I'm always fascinated when people come through with a clear message and make me understand what many things are about that I would not normally even touch or even perceive. And what you said today makes a great deal of sense. And I think that I would urge people to attend your session. I mean, particularly if it's Norman Baker who you're with, because to be quite honest, I might turn up myself because to see you and Norman together would be a delight, an absolute delight. And I do hope that there is a good attendance at your session. Where is it? It's Sunday morning, is it?
Sunday morning. Yeah, I forget the exact time, but it's definitely Sunday morning.
Well, I might bunk off church, Matt.
I wouldn't tell you to do that, but that sounds like a good idea to me.
Thank you very much for joining us. We've had a good half hour's chat, and I think that you've made a great deal of sense, and certainly you've explained a lot to me. And if you can explain it to me, then there's a wider audience out there that have understood what you're talking about. And I would urge them to come and listen to you. I think it's a fascinating topic, but you're obviously, you talked about communication. You are a great communicator, and that is something that is to be vastly desired in this country or in this world, for that matter, because I think that talking to one another is one of the hardest things that we do. We come away having totally failed to understand, but I've picked up an awful lot this morning, and I thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you too, and I hope the rest of that beer lives up to its initial promise.
It's still here. Thank you indeed, and I wish you well on Sunday, particularly if you're with Norman.
I am. Well, I'll give him your regards. Maybe I'll see you there. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Bye. Well, fascinating man. Absolutely fascinating man. And I think that I will actually turn up on Sunday, because to see he and Norman Baker together has got to be something that is well worthwhile turning up for. Okay, who are we? Okay, Kevin, here we go. There we go. Who we are, what we are, and it's what we have going for us this morning. And let's just remind you even more about who we are, because we are small. We are a small operation, but we punch well above our weight. We are not a local television service in the true sense of the word. We don't look for lost dogs, and we even ignore sometimes accidents on the local highway. But what we do is we try to connect small communities around the world. And we know from research, for instance, that, and we are about to get our gardener back, is Alex, who is, and his pal Joey, the dog, do a very fine show for us. And Alex has not been well, but he's going to rejoin us soon with a project which will keep everybody happy. But we do look at things which will straddle oceans and continents. For instance, what we know is that if Alex, for instance, talks about a plant and the manifestations and how to look after it in Lewis, that somebody of interest in gardening in New Zealand will actually find that useful. And that goes across the board of everything we talk about. So we are unique, we're different. We don't try to copy the big boys. We don't try to be BBC. We don't try to be ITV. We don't try to be CNN. We are simply ourselves. Quirky? Absolutely. Yes. But we do get on with trying to find stuff that is of interest and give it an interpretation which is international. Now, let me see about my movie and tell you more about us, I think. So there we are. Quirky old Mirador. And I was just looking to see whether there's another program that we have, which we wanted you to see. And just offhand, I can't put my finger on it, but we'll see if we can find it at some stage. I start off very clear in my mind about what we're going to do, and then I lose my way, particularly when we have fascinating guests, as we just did. The professor, and he's not really a professor, but he is appearing in the book festival, the Speakers Festival, on Sunday morning. I think it's about 10 o'clock or so, along with Norman Baker. And my goodness me, I can't wait to see those two together. I told him to kick Norman if he misbehaves. But well worthwhile in finding out what that is all about. And believe me, if the things that I heard this morning, I would be very keen to go and listen some more. It says one thing, as somebody says, neurology, and we tend not to really follow too much, because we think in neurology, what the hell, don't even know what the word means, but we do with that sort of explanation from a man who is able to give us a background such as he did, and to explain things very carefully. It is well worthwhile us listening to him. And indeed, I listen to every word, even though I've got my beer in front of me, and let's see. Can I actually find what I'm looking for? I doubt it. I'm really very bad at this sort of thing. But nonetheless, there are things which we are able to unfold, shall we say? Unfold. Let's because it's 10:36 and we have a little while to go, and we don't want to waste the time. So what we'll do is see what we can poke up out of our bag of tricks. And there's let's see. Looking back, we actually do want to show you some of the things we've done from the past, because we're rather proud of them. And here we go.
Our town. Beer, wine.
So, thank you for joining.
Hey, Ellie, come on, give us a kiss. Come on.
Do admire the hanging gardens of Babylon on the way. They can't even cut that back properly.
Hello. At last I've caught you asleep.
You did hold up a Bible upside down, but you held it up.
Hey there.
It is a massive ball of uselessness. Oh, you can't say that. Why is it my romances all go wrong? Emily was the first girl. Her mother thought me twee. She sent a big invitation with an RSVP.
It is wonderful to end a day like this, where I am completely sober and articulate, surrounded by people who cannot put two words together.
You said end the day like this. Isn't this the morning programme or something?
Yes,
Okay. You're ending it already?
Yeah, well, you've been drinking all day.
All day? That's all right then. It is the morning programme, you know.
Well, you will be drinking all day.
Oh, God, after this I will.
We've learned so much on this epic journey. We've learned what makes Lewis Lewis and what it's had to deal with in the past. We've learned... What else did we learn?
I'm Mark Landsman.
Diddle bib.
Pray for me. Goodbye.
Mirador TV. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to Mirador Television. We are the biggest little TV in the world, based in Lewes, East Sussex in England. Our aim is to entertain and to spice things up a little. We will also keep an eye on the local politics, because let's face it, someone has to. Our programmes range from stories about the local people to stories about people from all the way across the pond. Brought to you by our wonderful colleagues in New York. So why not sit back, relax with your favourite cuppa, or maybe your favourite tipple, and enjoy. This is Mirador Television.
For some peculiar reason, government seems to think that bigger is better. It doesn't matter. You can look at disasters around the world. If you want a really good example of bigger is not better, look at the old Soviet Union, which imploded. Huge, huge, huge. But the thought that we can do more, get more effective use of institutions, be they government or private, because they're bigger, seems to have settled so solidly in the minds of the bureaucrats that they can't actually mix and match. Of course, some things need to be big. Of course, some things need to have the capacity to handle international matters. But that is not true of local government. And trying to make local things, whether it's the local NHS or whether it's the local government, bigger because they think it'll be better, seems not to have been examined in any way. Lewes, this small town, merged its administration with Eastbourne. The result has been chaos, complete chaos. The accounts are all over the place. The politicians don't know who they're looking at when they go to scrutiny. The chief executive seems to favour Eastbourne because that's where he's located. All in all, bigger most certainly has not been better. And I personally am asking people to think about clawing back Lewes from this merger, which made no sense in the first place and certainly is not working. But now it's the NHS's turn. Oh gosh, yes, another monolithic government organisation. They want to have a super surgery. In fact, they're going to have a super surgery in Lewes. All the little surgeries and the dentists and all the little organisations that have to do with medicine and our health are going to be under one roof. Disaster. It already is disaster. Until recently, I could go to my surgery and I could talk to the ladies, delightful ladies I may say, behind the reception desk and explain my problem. I could also insist that I saw my dedicated doctor, which the NHS bravely said each person over 65 can have a dedicated doctor. I've got one, and by golly, is she a cracker. She is really, really very good. And I want to stay with her. But when I talk to people now, they have no idea, A, that directive is in place, or B, that I should be able to have the same doctor time after time after time. They don't know because they don't know me. They don't know me because now they are part of this huge, sprawling organization. The building yet to be built, incidentally, but the organizers can't wait, and so they've gone ahead and done it, which is now making the NHS bigger. But my golly, if anybody can argue that it's better, then I'd like to hear the argument. But these sort of things are beginning to happen also when it comes to media. Now, media has a special problem. Because of the internet, traditional media has shrunk. It has difficulty looking after local communities. So, media gets bigger. Local people get less service. And now it appears that according to Harvard University, that as this happens and as media shrinks, so the services provided by the local government get worse. And not only that, to cap it all, as a badge of honor, the council tax rises. Well, that's very true of this particular district, Lewes District. But in checking with colleagues around the country, it's true wherever you go. Reform? Not bloody likely. The only suggestion is that this situation can be resolved by us getting even bigger. I have no idea who my county councillors are or what they do, even though they're located in my hometown. Bigger is better. Come on, pull the other one. It's about time that we said, let's start to look at micro pubs. Doing very well, thank you, because the big boys couldn't satisfy the needs of the punter, the drinker. That was reform. Pushed on the big breweries. And let me say, I see Harvey's as really a microbrewery. They're not one of the great big pompous chains that tell us what we should drink and where we should drink it, and buy public houses and then put impossible conditions on the tenants. No, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about these huge conglomerates who actually, whether it's media or whether it's pubs, seem to think that bigger is better. Well, take a second look. Let's examine whether bigger is better. And if bigger turns out not to be better, then let's have reform going in the opposite direction. Let us get Lewes to be able to determine its own destiny. That is the democratic way, that is the right way, and not the way that the bureaucrats are doing it at the moment, which, as Mikhail Gorbachev said, one of the great mysteries of his political and public life is why Western European politicians are rushing to recreate the old Soviet Union. I made that charge against the EU. I hope I don't have to make it against my own country, against the UK. Bigger is better, but remember, you're watching television that is the biggest little TV in the world. Welcome to it. Keith Hayes. See you later.
Boiled or fried, boiled or fried. I don't know who he thinks he's kidding. He only ever had oysters and champagne. And I have to work with him.
Well, good morning. It's Keith Hayes at Priory Park in Lewes, standing or sitting by Jenry, our mascot, and indeed a very important person in history. And that's why I thought I would find Annie here. I'm very pleased that Annie Verrill is joining me for Break an Egg. our new morning program, and she's all right, really. It's like wind in the willows. They say that the squirrels are all right and the rabbits are all right, but we chaps were okay. Oh dear. Don't suppose you've got anything nice to say about me, have you?
What am I supposed to say to that? Although, you did mention an important person. I thought you were talking about me.
Yes.
Thank you.
She's a right little nag, you know. I mean, she gets after me for the slightest thing. Did you bring a pen? Oh, yes, I brought a pen. Well, it's a good job you remember because, you know, you have to work. I have to work with this woman day in, day out. I mean, can you imagine? No wonder. It's nothing to do with age that I'm bald and looking as old as I do.
Well, here I am to bring some youth into this program. And if you did things right the first time, I wouldn't have to nag you, you know. We're not doing it for fun, even though you'd like to believe so, wouldn't you?
Listen to it. Well, the reason that I was talking about nagging is that Gundrada, who is the wife of Bill Varenne, who was the first lord of Lewis after the Norman conquest in 1066, insisted that this priory should be built. And it was built in 1079, and a lot of it is still standing, despite the vandalism of Henry VIII, 400 years later, in fact. But the fact is, she nagged poor old William the Conqueror and her husband Bill to death, just to get it built. Nag, typical woman.
Yes. And then what happened? The priory was built. We wouldn't have a priory to sit at right now.
I'll give you that.
Well, there you go. I know I'm right.
I bet you there's more people would spend the money better way, just the way they do today.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, she hasn't been listening. Whenever the government says it's going to spend $2 billion or so, there's always somebody that says, oh, they could have been better spent on. Well, they argue like you and I.
You and politics. Blooming heck. You do get boring sometimes.
Yes, I suppose so, but then we always have to have a little touch of politics, particularly at this hour of the morning when we're talking to the people of Lewis.
What a way to wake up.
Oh, yes, wake up to listening.
If this is not
Hayes
going to
and
wake
Verrill
you up.
talking politics. But we do have, we can get off politics now, because we do have Stephen Catlin, who is to be the mayor of Lewis Town, that is, not Lewis District Council, next year. And he has an insight into the council, and he'll be giving us a little bit of more depth. So let's talk about something else. We have this morning a little bit on food.
Yummy. Just the thing I like to talk about.
Anytime I've been to a restaurant, well, never approves of anything I order.
Yeah, whatever. Because all you want to eat is blowing watery stuff.
I wouldn't be seen within a mile of water. You see how well she knows me. Just put a glass of water in front of me and I faint.
I meant oysters, okay? I'm not posh enough to know these things. And I don't like them.
Oh, listen to her. Not posh enough to know what an oyster is.
I'm not rich enough to like oysters.
I have to say, I was with her when she tried her first oyster.
Ooh,
Talk about comedy.
I bet that wasn't a pretty sight.
Well, I am, she's right, I am an oysters and champagne man. And I just love oysters. And when I lived in Northern Ireland, we were just round the corner from a company which went out of business, known as Kewen Oysters. So I was able to go and get a dozen or so a day. But it's always said that oysters...
Don't say it. No, don't say it.
But I've got to.
But no, it's too early for that.
What, eating oysters?
No, it's too early to listen to what you wanted to say.
Fiona was interviewed by a friend of mine who was the chief photographer of the Daily Mirror, Cyril Kane, who was known as the commander of the Red Character. And Cyril went down there and he said to Jasper Parsons, who was the man who ran the oystery, if that's what we call it, the fishery, and he said, is there any truth
Jasper, that in the saying that oysters make you feel frankly manly. And Jasper said, no, not at all, Cyril. He said, there's no truth to it whatsoever. And Cyril said, are you married, Jasper? He said, yes. He said, how many children do you have? 17. Oh, you don't find that funny?
Well, feel better now,
Oh, yes.
now that you mentioned your favourite topic.
I must say it's never done that for me, but the champagne, the little bubbles get up my nose and I just love it. How about you?
Champagne is good, but a Bloody Mary is even better.
Now tell us about the Bloody Mary.
Who doesn't know a Bloody Mary? First of all, the name. Very good name. Some tomato juice, some vodka. The more the better. Some horseradish and some black pepper. And maybe a little bit of sherry in there. Just for the twist.
Sounds good, but some people, Canadians particularly, say that they like tomato juice. Have you tried that?
Well, you sort of maybe try it once. Not for me, no.
And how about V8, the vegetable juice? No?
No.
No pleasing some people. A Bloody Mary it is, made in the original style. The original Bloody Mary.
Yummy.
Okay, well, we've had a good natter to start off the programme this morning. I think that Annie said that she wanted her eggs poached. I will have mine fried. And so we're going to go away for a few minutes to give Stephen and one or two others a chance to butt in on this programme, both about food, politics, architecture, you name it. We've got a whole potpourri coming up. Toodle-pip.
Goodbye.
Well, there we are. There's stuff that we did a couple of years ago, but much of it was pertinent today. Annie Verrill, a very talented young lady, now I think probably a star performer in court. She headed off to be a lawyer, and we wish her well in that. She's certainly a brilliant broadcaster and a loss to this industry, but there you are, you can't have everything. And is indeed, we've had an awful lot this morning. One of our interviewees didn't turn up, but there was plenty to keep us busy right up until the bitter end, because it is now 10:56. We only have 3 or 4 minutes left. It has reached 0 centigrade outside. I have poured by Kevin my beer to test before 11 o'clock when the bar officially opens, but that's my privilege. And I've looked forward and enjoyed our journey through the morning this morning. We start at 8:30. We take a look at the papers, and this morning the papers were full of the fact that we've got corrupt coppers, and that we've got coppers who have taken advantage of their position and actually molested or raped women, and in one case over a period of 18 years, and they didn't unmask him. So we have to ask whether, in fact, the police are the next organization to come under inspection from our leaders in Westminster, and that something is done about it, because there is every indication that all is not well with the police force, starting with the Met, but going on into the shires. There is plenty there to discuss, just as there is the NHS. We are in dreadful trouble, and our leadership, as Stuart Dolby, my colleague, points out, looks for now for stardom, for stardust, and persuades us voters that's what we should be looking at, instead of looking at the old style politician who may have been arrogant, but who believed in their country, who had a sense of duty. That sense of duty is missing. And as for reform, my goodness me, don't mention the word to a politician, he turns green and is likely to chase you out of his office. Come the day, we have to look at both things, the return of a sense of duty and reform of a good many government institutions. Otherwise, we cannot have confidence in our medical system, in our judicial system, in our police system, and for that matter, in the Foreign Office and the Home Office and the other institutions that form the civil service. We cannot have confidence in them unless they engender confidence in us. And there is no suggestion whatsoever that they are making any effort at all. And our politicians are just going along with them. Yes, Minister is in the ascendant. I'm afraid that the civil servant is still the tail wagging the dog. And that's something that has to change. Right, 10:58. Let's just remind you who we are, because I have to keep on doing that. Let's do our own tail wagging.
Well done, the energy companies. They're full of bright ideas to help their customers. Now they've made power so expensive that for an average house such as this, you can't afford to heat it. So you don't need appliances such as this. But that means you also don't need a fridge, because you can keep your groceries cool and fresh without it. The house is cold enough. Well done, chaps.
Well, that's been a fascinating morning to romp through. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have, or those of you who watch later in the day will enjoy it. Until tomorrow, we venture forth with more things. Stuart Dolby will be here with interviews galore, and we carry on into the rest of the week until the Speakers Forum begins on Friday. And a fascinating weekend that's going to be in Lewes, with so many famous people and plenty of authors in town discussing their books, their ideas, and where they're going to and where they came from. Until tomorrow, toodle pip. Oops.